Hi, and welcome to Interviews by Kathleen, where I dive into the fascinating world of authors, publishers, editors, narrators, illustrators, and more. I'm your host, Kathleen Osborne. I write science fiction, romance with aliens. I have published three novels, and I'm the founder of Transcendent Authors, a group of authors from various countries and various genres. Together, we write anthologies, which are collections of short stories. We've written seven, and we're writing our eighth now. I am excited today to introduce you to Carol Shillibeer. Did I say that right? Shillibeer?
Shillibeer.
Shillibeer.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a poet. She is a writing coach, a critique group leader. She also has 4 degrees, including anthropology, which I found very interesting, and an FMA holder. And we were just talking before we went on the air. She's from Nova Scotia. She lives by this ocean, and it's cool there compared to where I live right now. So I'm in envy.
Yeah.
So, Carol, when did you first start writing? Was it connected to storytelling or your poetry? What brought
Yeah,
it
I,
on?
s- I started like many writers, when I was quite young. I didn't think of myself as a writer at all, but I wrote down things that happened to me. I have a very active imagination, and it was, I'm not even sure I'd call them poems, although there are a few that survive. But I became a single parent early on, and that put paid writing for a while, except academic stuff, of course, which you have to do when you're part of academia.
Hmm.
And I didn't really return to poetry until later on in my life. And I was nearing the end of a teaching career, and I wanted to do something. I'm very much a person who believes in learning. Um, I wanted to do something that was difficult and pushed my limits. And for me, that was poetry. I think poetry is a very difficult thing to do. It's to do it well.
Hmm.
And it involved a lot of learning. And so I guess near the end of my career as an academic in terms of teaching in universities, that's when I took the MFA. I'd already taken 3 degrees and I decided I would do something else. And then I guess really at that point, when I realized when the first poem was published. So some years after I started, I decided to start sending things out. I got the journal in the mail. At that point, things were still through the mail. We didn't have this lovely thing we have now of submitting by through the internet. And I saw my poem in print.
Oh,
It was then that I realized that it was a serious endeavor. It was still a lot of fun, but that I had lots of things to learn, that I should take it seriously because now there was this thing out there in the world that would survive me and was in this journal. That's when I really knuckled under, started to learn the craft, to be very uh, pointed about it. I started reading and thinking and writing and trying and experimenting. So I've been writing for a long time, but really I've been becoming a poet since then, since I've realized how important it is.
well, I think that we can see that when we look at Robert Burns and we look at Shakespeare. The poetry lasts throughout centuries,
Yeah.
and
And it,
the meter doesn't change. Um, styles can because of different countries. I was talking with a young girl the other day, and she's a poet, but she's experimenting with the Japanese method. And
mhm.
I'll be darned if I can remember the name of it now, but it's where you take a word and you write a poem. And then out of that, you write like 15 other poems,
Mm,
expanding on it and expanding on it. But it's almost like a small book, booklet, if you will, on that one subject
mhm.
that she's talking about. And yeah, and then she read a couple of the pages, and it
Yeah.
was just incredible,
Mhm. Drilling
incredible.
down on a subject, I don't know the name of the methodology either, but it's that I was just talking with some friends about that this morning. The idea of drilling down on something specific. It's very different to write a poem than to create a manuscript of a poem. I've been in the last few years, I've been working with trying to understand what a manuscript looks like, how it functions in the world today, as opposed to, 30 or 40 years or 100 years ago. And that technique of drilling down is one of them. This idea of having a center point, a feeling. It can be a feeling. It can be a single word. It can be an incident, for example,
Hmm.
and coming at it from like the hub of a flower and the poems around it and the
Hmm.
stem and yeah. So it's a universal concept that really has a lot to do with how poetry connects itself to each other. Poems connect to each other.
Okay, okay, that makes sense
Mhm.
because they should. I
Yes.
mean, you look at um, back to Shakespeare.
Hmm.
All of the plays that he wrote, it was all poetry.
Hmm. Yes. And very often they're all centered on the same sets of myths. I've been reading Ovid lately, and very many of Shakespeare's plays are centered around stories that you find in the Metamorphoses. They're changed
Uh-huh.
to suit his particular sensibility in the times, but they're there, and I think it's this the the poetry of Ovid is talk about something that lasts. Goodness, I mean,
Hmm.
it keeps showing up over and over and over, and the sensations you get when you read it, the it's pretty brutal in places. It's just it's this compressed emotional form,
Hmm.
and that's I think the thing that I love so much about poetry. It's I read stories too. I read a lot of stories, and they're the place to do certain kinds of world building in science fiction, for example, is
Hmm.
fabulous. That's makes such it allows a new kind of world to create. But poetry does allows the distillation of emotion into this one phrase, sometimes a single word, and then you remember that for sometimes an entire lifetime. It's a
Hmm.
very powerful form when done well.
Yeah, I remember as a young woman, wild, wicked, and single, as they say, in my 19s and the 20s and that, um, going into coffee houses and stuff, and there'd be the beatniks,
Yeah.
based on that, and they would say a word, and then they'd sit down.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it was a surreal time.
Hmm.
Uh, what do you think uh, poetry is today? How is that impacting our world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I I don't think that humans are ever going to be a species that doesn't have feeling. We
Hmm.
are guided very largely by feeling, much more so than by reason,
Oh yeah.
certainly, um, especially as groups. So when you want to corral a group of people to behave in a certain way, one of the ways to do that is create a book of poems, and we have several of them. One of them is called the Bible, another one's called Torah, another one's called Quran. And so I think poetry is something we understand as having very strong effects on people. I don't think that's any different today than it was any time in the past. I think the difference for us is to do with our technology, the dissemination of it. So I can go online and find Tender Buttons by Gertrude Stein,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the earlier uh, sort of uh, surreal prose poems, I think I could call it. And it's powerful and amazing. And that would have been, I can look at Amy Lowell, I can uh, still look at Shakespeare, I can go across the world and look at some of the wonderful poetry coming out of the horrors in Gaza right now. I
Mm-hmm.
can read Japanese poetry. And I think though, and they all come with different dollops of feeling
Mm-hmm.
that I would not have had access to. In my childhood, for example, I mean, I was very much a library person, but libraries are constrained by the what's available in a country
Mm-hmm.
and what's available or considered to be appropriate for public viewing. And so librarians are wonderful human beings, but they're guided by bureaucracy. But the internet, as we know, is not guided by anything except by feeling.
Yes.
And so I can, I'm careful about what I read. I don't like hate literature. Although I study it sometimes, there's a wonderful anti-Semitic piece that comes from a, it was already in existence at the year 1000.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a study in persistence, but it's also a kind of poetry. So I think poetry has a real power, and it's a kind of power that is spreads. And given the world that we live in, it spreads even more widely now today. And what it means is poets have, I think, they've always had responsibility, which is why they're killed in or imprisoned in fascist regimes. But it's even more important, I think, now that poets remind themselves and remind others about what it means to be human, both in its
Mm-hmm.
good and its bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. There's um, protest has always used poetry.
Hmm. Yeah.
Always.
There was
Um,
a Turkish poet. He wrote one of my favorite poems of all time. I call it the squirrel poem. On what it means to be living, I think is the title of it. Nazim Hikmet is the poet's name. It's just a splendid, splendid poem, and there's this edge of humor in it. He spent much of his adult life in prison for being up as a political prisoner. And his response was a sort of glowing beauty of the world that he lived in, and the acknowledgement of the frailty of our earth and the humans who live in it. I will never forget that poem. And I mean, it's a political protest. And Anna Akhmatova is another one. I don't know a whole lot about Russian history. I know more in the last few years than I have, but she writes about the breadlines and the worker protests. And
mhm.
I know more about Russia personally and emotionally through her work than
Mhm.
through history books. So, yes, I think we have an impact. It certainly
Yes.
has had an impact on me.
Yes. Yes. Now, what type or um, genre, if you will, of poetry do you write, or do you write multiples?
I do. I like surrealism a lot. I tend to, because of my background, my education, I tend towards, I love anthropology and the study of the world and philosophy. And so I tend to write sometimes more difficult pieces. But in the last 5, 6 years, I've been working really hard to train myself how to write simple narrative pieces
Mm-hmm.
and to combine those two worlds. So I have just finished a manuscript called Surviving Mother. I had a difficult childhood. Um, and in it, there are very simple sort of notes to mother and notes to self, which are lyrical, but they're essentially prose. So they're very easy to understand. They're very common language. And
Hmm.
then it develops as it goes through, and there are more complex pieces that use words like detritus and mortify.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's um, I've been working to cover a range of styles that are more accessible, but also take into account my personal preferences, which are tend towards surrealism and language poetry and difficulty.
I think in every type of writing, we have those dilemmas on wanting to do one thing, knowing it's good and it's from our heart. Um, but also we need to learn the simple things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and because if you can do the simple things, um, then somebody can step up to the
Yes.
different steps and progress. And is that where you do the coaching with?
Yes. So yeah, I really admire Billy Collins, for example, as a poet. I call him the king of the mundane because the kinds of things he's written a lot. I've read 3 books of his, but he tends to focus on the things, everyday things.
Mhm.
So he has one delightful poem where he finds a dead mouse under his table, and his cat, and going for a walk in the neighborhood, and there's this quality of narrative precision. But the thing is that when I talk about his work, for example, as opposed to, say, Jory Graham, who's at the other end of that scale in terms of difficulty, I adore Jory Graham's poetry. Um, the thing that I talk about in terms of teaching when I'm working with people who are either beginners or more experienced poets is that both are equally difficult to achieve.
Mhm.
Billy Collins might seem simple, but there's this quality to his language that always brings in this feeling of a kind of whimsicality. And that is not easy to achieve. There's a kind of kindness in his work that is brings that feeling with it. And so in when I talk about in thing, I always present it as a kind of range of voices, but the simple does not mean it's simpler to achieve. And what we do in most of the classes is we go through poems, like one of Billy Collins' poems, one of Anna Akhmatova's, etc., and we look at the craft. How does that poet achieve that sense? The line endings, the kind of words, the sounds, the sibilance, the how does it, the rhythm of it when you say it out loud, where do the stresses lie? And there's so much you can learn just by reading someone's poem.
Mhm.
You can learn about them as a poet, about how our brains process sound,
Yes.
how it turns it from a sound into a feeling. So a lot of the classes, when we do workshop poems, that's what we talk about. It's not just, is this a good piece or a bad piece? In fact, I almost never say that because it's really pointless
Very
to think about it.
subjective to me.
It's
So,
extremely, and really, it's nothing to do with fact. But
mhm.
what is to do with fact is how many S's are in those 2 lines. How do they use white space? Why is that extra break there? Things like that. Those you can see, they're objective, they're tangible, they have actual um, effect. So that's what we talk about. And we do that when we talk about when we workshop our own work too. So
Mhm.
how does that come across in the poem? The fact that there is no assonant say in a line. What is that why it sounds prose-like? If you change those to both of them having F, it's going to sound more lyrical right away. So that's what we focus on.
Oh, okay. Now, in regard to coaching, what makes for a safe and productive critique environment for those that don't know
Yes.
where to go, how to conduct one?
Yeah. Kindness. I think for me, the most important, I had an unkind childhood. That's why I think that for me, kindness is the critical component of any successful workshop, whether that's in an
Hmm.
MFA program or at Poets and Writers, which is where it's easiest. One of the ways it's easiest to find me is at Poets and Writers. I do a number of workshops there. Um, and I think one of the reasons I like Poets and Writers so much is that the people that I've met that work there, I don't work there, I'm just lead groups, um, they are kind. They're about one of the people there who worked there. I attend a generative workshop with her. She's no pressure, no pressure, she says all the time. So I think it's about allowing a person to come in where they are. I have a lot of people who are afraid. They've been writing
Hmm.
poetry for 20, 30, 40 years sometimes, and they've never tried to publish anything and they've never done a workshop because they're afraid. This is personal stuff. They don't want to be yelled at. And so I think for me, the only thing you can do is you can try a workshop, but the thing you need to look for is kindness. If
Hmm.
it's unkind, then I bow out. I will not attend a workshop that's like that. It's just why would I do that? You know? So I
Yeah,
think for me that's more important than almost anything.
yeah. We always, at least for writing, um, do what I call the Oreo method. You do a compliment, you find something good,
Yeah.
then you point out some errors and offer recommendations
Hmm.
because it's not your work.
Right. One of
And
the
then
things,
again, the
yeah,
good
I
comments.
I see that method in operation, and it works as long as it's not the compliment isn't a
A
shoe in for
fake.
the
Yeah.
yeah, right. But I think I have a friend who says this is not a democratic process and we're not writing a poem by committee, she says all the time,
Yep.
which I think is absolutely the case. So if it were one of my stock phrases, if it were my poem, I would probably think about adding a comma here, for example, because it's not my poem. And ultimately, the decisions are made by the author and
Hmm.
should be so. If the author doesn't want to change it, the author doesn't want to change it. And that's okay. It's not, it's it is subjective and personal. And there will always be readers that don't get what we do. You can't expect 100%. Even Billy Collins, as narrative as his work is, does not get 100%. It just doesn't happen.
Hmm.
And if the more obscure you write, like Tender Buttons is a very, very famous book, and not everybody likes it. So I think coming to grips with where your place is, like in your own voice, and the relationship you want to build with a set of readers. As a poet, that's the most difficult thing to learn because we all have our anomalies, I guess, or our own moments,
Idiosyncrasies.
idiosyncrasies. Yes, we all have our places like that. Every human being does. And you need to make a decision as a writer where those are going to show through and just be okay with them being idiosyncrasies and where you want to connect with your reader. It's not either us, the writer, or the reader, it's the bridge between the two that makes the poem.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And it's in some ways that's the difference with writing a novel or a story versus writing a poem. It's much more individualistic. Um, you have your own style when you write a novel or even a nonfiction piece, but you still need some help with commas, your
Yes.
grammar,
Yes.
things like that. So, and sometimes somebody says, this just doesn't move it along. It is not necessary. And so you have to kill your darlings. I have a darling file for each book.
Do you?
So if
That's
if I
awesome.
need if I need it in a
Yeah.
uh, future book, I've got it.
Hmm.
But for
I,
that,
yeah, I was going through editing some pieces and the same thing in poetry. It's like, oh, I love this line, but it doesn't work in this piece. It's not right for, and you just have to rip it out. And it's hard to do that. And
mm,
sometimes, I mean, I keep drafts, of course, but and sometimes it never gets used. But it's better that the poem, there's a point at which a poem takes on its own life, breathes on its
yeah,
own, and you can't just stick things to it because you want them there. That's offensive.
hmm
And it'd be like, okay, your child is born, and you're gonna suddenly, make the ch child wear a red wig because you wanted a red-headed kid. No, you don't do that. You take what you get and you
hmm
allow them to be the best they can be.
Do you feel that your writing style, because from what I'm hearing from you, it's very similar to my writing style. I'm what they call a pantser or a discovery writer. I sit
Mm.
down and I discover what's at the end of my fingertips
Oh,
as
absolutely.
I
I am.
type.
Yes, I have absolutely. I have a daily file. So my writing method is that I must hit the keyboard every day that I possibly can. I have some health issues and that hit me now and then. And so, I might spend 3 days in bed because I'm having a very bad few days. And I might not, but any day I can, I, and it's called free write. And I just
hmm
sit down and I have a poem that's just getting published called Trying to Write, which was one of my free writes that day, and it was and pardon my because I do swear, and in the poem I swear, but I start with saying something: I don't want to fucking be here. I hate this. This keyboard is shit, and I just rant. And then, which is often, if I'm having a bad day, often how it starts. But by the end of the paragraph, what has happened is in my internal world, I have some stock characters who have been with me for many years, and two of those are Maisie and Sydney, and they appear by the end of it, and it turns into this beautiful little moment of seeing Sydney at the edge of the lake. Uh, in the rain with his celebrating his arms up. And that's what happens to me. I start and I just type whatever it is I'm feeling. It doesn't matter what it is. Something surfaces almost all the time.
hmm
Whether that can be, I want to turn it into a poem or not, I don't know. But that's how I begin. And I just let it go and let it go through my fingers. Sometimes I'll even close my eyes and type and just let it. I can write to prompts, but almost always it's a combination of the two. So
hmm
somebody will set me a prompt and then I'll hold that like a filter, like on a camera, so that it comes through that filter. Sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does, and then I'll get a piece. But it's almost always just by opening the door.
Yeah. I have another question for you. What impact do you hope your work has, both as a poet and a mentor?
My work. Okay.
hmm
So here's the other thing about being, at least for, I think it's true for men too, at least a number of the men that are my students, but it is more true for women, at least I think so, is that many of us are terribly afraid of
hmm
claiming ourselves to be artists or poets, as if we were getting above our stations, as my aunties would say. I have a British, at least in part anyway, a British background. Um, there's this, I have been writing for years. I have My first book came out under the name Ars Kogajanda. My next two came out under the name Pearl Button. I have had this, I'm very introverted, terrible difficulty with, I need to write, but, and I publish, but, and I have a lot of poems published under Carol Shillibeer, which is my birth certificate name. But there's a fear of being known. And I did have a stalker for a while, so there's some reality to that fear. But I have just started a course. Well, actually, it starts on the 16th, the first seating, called for writers just like myself. I have discovered through Poets and Writers that this is a very common problem, that we're afraid of letting people know who we are. So I started a course called the Authors Platform for the Terribly Afraid, or something along that line. And it's about how to create a platform for yourself to let people know that you're a writer and how to find your books, and without feeling like a marketer, because I am no marketer. Something that I can manage. I just in this last few days got my domain name is carolshillibeer.com, and I just got the website up. I work for the Writers Federation of Nova Scotia. I'm on a board, and I am their treasurer. And this is the year 4 of my 4-year term. And it in this last few months, it has become clear that they don't know. I work for the Writers Federation. They don't know I have published books. That is how secretive you can become with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And it's ridiculous. I go in there and I do the work because I love that organization very much. They do really good work for writers in Nova Scotia. And it never occurred to me to let the people know that I'm a writer. And that's fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
It's not rational. So that's when I decided, when a couple of people came to me and I thought about it, that's why I decided to create Readers Platform as another group. And my email now has a signature on it that shows people where my website is. My website now I'm a painter, I'm a poet, I am a group leader. I do a number of things. So I've now put it all out there on my website. And I got to tell you, that was really difficult to do. I'm in my late 60s, and it took that much time to occur to me that I could just let other people know that I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love teaching, absolutely love teaching, but I'm also a writer. So I guess the impact, I write a lot about female autonomy, about being and taking one's life back from a misogynistic and paternalistic world. And unfortunately, going back that way it won't last, but it's still. And I decided that as a writer that I needed to do the same thing. So I try to live what I preach.
Mm-hmm.
And my stuff tends to be very lyrical. I have a book that's being shopped right now that's about women's friendships. Some of the women are not even Iphigenia, for example, and Antigone from classical literature are in the book. I consider them my friends. I think about them all the time. Their position in their societies, their lives, what they had to deal with, the hardships, the kind of choices they were forced to make. So I guess that's what I hope, is to encourage, just like I do in my workshops, encourage
Mm-hmm.
women to tell their stories.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me that same question. That's why I asked it of you. And my desire is to give somebody a vacation. They cannot,
Yes.
They can travel off planet, on planet, meet different things, see different things when it's on a budget.
Yes. I totally agree with you. Sci-fi, I haven't read as much recently, and I almost always read women authors now, mostly because I have a short amount of time left, you know. I mean, well, I'm not 70 yet, but I'll be there soon. And I really want to read about women who make decisions for themselves and how they deal with things. And sci-fi is one of those ways. There's a new series by Charlaine Harris right now called Gunny Rose. It's a kind of sci-fi Western supernatural. Well, you know who she is. I mean, she wrote the Sookie Stackhouse books. And they're delightful because there's this young woman who she's a gunslinger essentially, and she does protection details, getting people from one place to another in the fallen America. It's a revision of history,
Mm-hmm.
and they're delightful. Charlaine Harris is a good writer. She's a good storyteller, and she's funny. So I read that, and but as well as I read Antigone. I like both. And Antigone is no vacation, that play. But Charlaine Harris is.
Mm-hmm. Well, mine are a little bit. Someone once said, I have a lot of subplots.
Mm,
So it makes it intricate. And I have more, most people say, you got too many characters. And then they go to throw one out and they say, oh, you can't throw her
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
You know, you do need her, don't you? I said, yes, I do.
I'm not surprised. Women's lives are often very complicated.
Hmm.
We are almost always required by our societies to be in the web of family of some form or another, even if it's not our natal family. A lot of women choose not to have children. That's fine. But it doesn't mean they get out of those webs of social contract. We are, I think, built for it in one sense, in terms of oxytocin and how it works in women, in females. But we're also built for it because our society expects it of us, expects us to be, and we're trained for it from the beginning. So it's not surprising. That's the book that I was talking about. It's called The Calamitous House of Kindness, the one in which Antigone is one of the women that I write to. And it really is about the web of relationships that sustain women's lives and how we achieve those and how we can be like in workshop. It's important to be honest about a poem, but it's
Yes.
equally important to be kind.
Hmm.
And you can do both. It does not need to be a war, and it does not need to involve sharp, pointy instruments. Kindness is as good a tool as a surgeon's knife.
If you feel, I believe this because it happened to me. I ran into somebody who I just could not edit. I could
Mhm.
not. I found that I felt like I was attacking her.
Yeah,
And so I finally went to her and I said, I'm sorry. I know you're an excellent author, but I cannot edit because I start turning it into mine. And that is not right.
that's correct. I admire that decision of yours because it's very difficult in workshop to allow the poet's style to exist on its own without. It's very difficult for people, for example, who like the Billy Collins style and plain language style to edit complex language or language poetry styles unless they can step away from their own preferences and just look at it from kind of a academic distance. That doesn't, you have to be a good editor, you have to do that.
Hmm.
And if you can't, and I agree with you, if I find myself in a situation where I can't do that for one reason or another, I step away because I'm not unwilling to violate either the poem or the writer.
It's exactly what it is. It's
Yeah.
a total violation. And it's
Yes.
an, I've been attacked verbally over things.
Yeah.
Had the red pen applied uh, to the point that I was in high school, I quit writing,
Yeah.
and I was a major in English.
Yeah.
I had straight A's, but it was through poetry that I got
Wow.
that.
Yeah. I had a situation one time, a long time ago. It's only once it's ever happened that the editor accepted some pieces and then changed them without my permission.
Oh, oh, slap hands,
Ooh,
slap hands.
ooh, yes.
Oh,
I never,
nasty.
I never submitted again.
No,
There
no.
was no point at all, I felt anyway, of chastising him. I mean, it's his journal, but I never submitted again. And I just, I had in one other case, this was a workshop situation. Um, the guy simply rewrote the poem, and he put it into his style. That's essentially what he did.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a very good poet, very good poet.
But he's not you.
He is not me, and he doesn't have my permission to change my voice. I am not male. I like being female, and I intend to have a female voice. I am not stupid. I am an academic, and I am female,
Hmm.
and that is perfectly okay.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that women writers have to tackle, and minority writers have to tackle this as well, is that the tendency of the gatekeepers, a phrase that is from someone else who I also really admire, the gatekeepers, sometimes it's conscious, like a publishing house. It has a very specific ethic. It wants to stick to that. That's fine. That's who they are. That's what they want to publish. But there's the unconscious gatekeepers. So it's like where a part of my family are from are Central Washington State. On the reservation, they have their original language is Interior Salish, a form of Interior Salish. And because of the nature of the time and the history, they speak what's called Indian English in the same way that we call Ebonics as Black English or African American English. And Indian English is a kind of sub-dialect. It's a way of identifying uh, who they are and where they're from and to each other. But what happens is Indian English goes into the white university system where this is how I ran into it, where I was teaching. And it's to the white teacher there or to the academic who has, say, a PhD in literature, it sounds like bad English. And it's not, it's Indian English. And without that understanding, they do the red line thing too. One of the jobs that I had teaching was at a reservation school for adults who wanted to go to the white college, the 2-year or the 4-year 4-degree certification of some kind. And one of the things that I taught was how to write standard English and why Indian English is perfectly fine, but it's not what they are going to expect, and teaching them the difference. The same is true for Ebonics. Now we celebrate Audre Lorde, for example, who's a really, really fine poet. Oh, just powerful poetry. But there's a voice there that is not common in the sort of publishing world. Um, it is more so now, which is wonderful. The same is true with Indian English and with Indians, Aboriginal folks in North America. They call themselves Indians. That's the word I use. I know it's in the white world. But
Native.
Indigenous Native Americans, um, they have the same difficulty moving into poetry, except for someone like Sherman Alexie, who fabulously intelligent and can manage that ground, that bridge between white society and his own society.
I've got, we're totally off, but I want to ask you this because we do need to wrap up. If your life was a poem, because I just thought this was so fun, if your life was a poem, what would the title be?
Yeah. I think I think it's a poem that I've written recently, actually. Um, how should I be living? How should I live? It's Fanny Howe wrote a piece that I read about that. And I wrote a response to it. And for me, I think being a poet, being an artist, being an anthropologist is all about questioning the kind of life that we lead, I lead. And it has led to some fairly major changes. Like, I don't charge for workshops, for example. I don't, in art, I don't charge for that kind of work because it's a transactional kind of life. And I don't want that to be in my art. I don't. And that comes because I have spent my life questioning that. How should I live? What's the ethical thing for me, given what I know, given my past? And so I think that's what, if my life was, how should I live is the question. And I keep focusing on it. Am I doing the right thing here? Uh, is there something that I can do better? I've spent a lot of time on that question.
I think everyone does, whether they realize it or not. We all have an introspective. I questioned, you know, when I retired from the military, my question, what should I do now? And then I stayed in the same career field and I went to work for Northrop on the B2 program. And from there, I went into ministry. And from ministry, I went into direct sales. And from direct sales, I went into, I didn't sew. I learned how to sew and I made designer dog clothes. And when I couldn't do that anymore physically,
Yeah.
then I started writing and baking
Mm-hmm.
because when my characters went off and did something I didn't want them to do, I had to figure out how to get them back without ruining the whole thing. So I went and baked because you follow direction. There's no
Yes.
thinking. Your mind can go off. And that was, everybody has a different release, but it's all a question. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is
Mm-hmm.
this the right step for me?
Yeah.
Sometimes I have found over the years it takes extreme pain for me to move out of the position I'm in and I need to go someplace else, do
Yeah.
something else. I'm called to do something else. So
Yeah.
I
For
am
me, it's
just,
nightmares, not extreme pain usually, but nightmares.
yeah, that
Then I go, uh-oh.
I need to reevaluate.
Yeah, that's right.
I need to find where I'm supposed to be because
Hmm.
then I'll flourish.
Hmm. And I agree, I am flourishing. I'm happy. Uh, I've come out of trauma and I'm happy. I love where I live. I have crows and foxes for neighbors, wild
Oh,
roses, and a big garden, and I listen to the birds. I I live semi-rurally. I still have internet, right, and all the things of modern life that I adore. So I think you're right. And it's that questioning, 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 and always paying attention to what you do, how you
mm-hmm,
affect people, where you
mm-hmm.
are, that makes me happy. It's that.
I think that's wonderful. I just think it is. Thank you for joining me on Interviews with Kathleen. And I hope everyone listening has enjoyed today's episode with Carol Shillibeer from Nova Scotia. Don't forget to check the slides at the end of the show. They'll include information about how to contact Carol and me as well about our upcoming announcements, either one of us have for you. And stay tuned for the next exciting interview and discussion. Until then, keep exploring, and stay inspired. Thank you.